A very interesting lesson period this morning, partially because all the coughing you've been hearing in the back has been me, so bear with me as I'll be trying to deal with that. There's also the little doodad that hooks up the computer has evaporated, so I will be trying to make sure keeping up with two slideshows at the same pace. Obviously you don't know when I'm thinking I'm supposed to switch things, but if it's real obvious that I get out of whack, point at the screen, wave your arms. So I don't want to get far out because that gets really confusing. Like that. All right, here we go. So this morning we're going to be talking about pondering in the Psalms. The idea of pondering something, kind of the same as meditation. I was looking at the way things were translated. The same word can be translated kind of both ways. Depends on what the translators wanted to do with it. But recurring theme in the Psalms and a recurring theme in Scripture in general, that you're supposed to be thinking about whatever it's specifically talking about, things of God in general, that kind of thing. Multiple circumstances call for this kind of pondering because of the effect it will have on our thinking. If you think about one thing as opposed to another, that'll change your attitude, it'll change your mood. Obviously, it'll change what you're thinking about because you're thinking about something else, and it'll change our behavior. And as I said, it's generally the same thing as meditate. So, I could have also included in this all the places that talk about meditation, but already I'll probably end up going longer than I intend. So there will be, I think it's 5 different psalms that we're going to look at that use this word to talk about what we're supposed to be doing with our minds. We're looking at who does it, when they do it, what exactly it is that they're pondering, and the result for them, and because of that, hopefully make application for ourselves. But instances, the who's, I'm sure there's other things you could squeeze into these, but either mankind, people as a whole, or the individual in the Psalms, it's someone writing from the perspective of I. Are those cases when you're in anger, facing yourself or viewing judgment on somebody else, when you're in trouble, or one of them specifically mentions always, so that's kind of a catch-all. What pondering the holy people that God has set apart, God's justice, God's deeds, the days of old, and the blameless way. And some of these psalms use multiple ones of these terms. But imagine that God would talk about the same thing more than once. And regarding the results, we will either end up silent because of what we were going to say, and thinking about it longer has changed our minds, so we keep our mouth shut. Telling of God's word, a better perspective, better clarity of thought, better reliance on God, or personal integrity. And the Psalms that we'll be looking at are Psalm 4, 64, 77, 143, and 101. And those are kind of the paths through the different steps that those are taking. It hadn't occurred to me till now, but I suppose I could tell what's up there because it's still on this screen. Sometimes I'm really dumb. So the first one we'll be looking at is Psalm 4. If you would like to flip over there. 4 out of the 5 of these are quite short, and the other one isn't even terribly long, so we will end up reading all of that one as well. But most of these are very well encapsulated in just a few verses. Psalm 4. Answer me when I call, O God of my righteousness. You have given me relief when I was in distress. Be gracious to me and hear my prayer. O men, how long shall my honor be turned into shame? How long will you love vain words and seek after lies? But know that the Lord has set apart the godly for himself. The Lord hears when I call to him. Be angry and do not sin. Ponder in your own heart. Be silent. Offer right sacrifices and put your trust in the Lord. There are many who say, who will show us some good? Lift up the light of your face upon us, O Lord. You have put more joy in my heart than they when their grain and wine abound. In peace I will both lie down and sleep, for you alone, O Lord, make me dwell in safety. So he kind of goes back and forth between talking to himself in this to kind of calm himself down from being in a stressful situation to sort of general truths, but what he's talking about kind of generally applies to both. In a place of distress, David looks around and says people are messed up. There's a lot of Psalms you can look at where that's kind of the result that is come to, because you look around the world and that's the conclusion you come to, is people do things they ought not to do. Oh man, how long shall my honor be turned into shame? How long will you love vain words and seek after lies? Mankind loves a lie and turns his honor into shame. Why do people do that? There's obviously two general options you can take in life. One is do right, the other is not do right. Why do people not do right? Because they think there's some kind of benefit in them for them. Why do we do what's right? Well, because God tells us to, but also because there's some benefit in it for us. We don't want to suffer in hell. We want to be in heaven with God. So everything's kind of incentive based. We want what's good. They want what's good, but what they're seeing as good is something else. So they think it has benefit for them, and they're wrong about it, as we will see. Before we get into why they're wrong and where the real benefit lies, interesting to note that he mentions anger, and we know from our own lives that we get burned by that a lot more often than we would think. Oh well, I'm going to go talk to someone, and that's probably going to be a difficult conversation, but I'll be able to handle it okay. And then, lo and behold, it's not as easy as you thought it was going to be. And it's interesting that there's the warning so closely following the be angry part. Be angry and do not sin. When we see a warning immediately following a command, or something like that, what do we know? That error is very, very, very likely to happen. I don't know how many people have played baseball, keep up with baseball or whatever, but imagine you're a little league, you haven't been able to steal bases before now, you have to stand on the base until the bat hits the ball. Now it's the next year, you're up into the next league, you're allowed to steal bases now, and you're allowed to lead off. You get to first base, and the coach says, okay, now, you can lead off, you can take steps off the base. And then he says, but don't get too far away, because the pitcher can throw it over here and you'll be out and you'll have to go back to the dugout. And that at-bat you just went through will be worthless. He's not going to tell you, something about, okay, you can take a few steps off, but if you're catching, put white out on your fingernails so the pitcher can read your pitch signs better. That's irrelevant. That error is not likely to occur for that person right then. However, if you just say, okay, you can lead off with no warning, what are you going to do? You're just going to start walking. Well, second base is right there. Why shouldn't I take it? So he gives the warning right away, because that's what we do. We get angry, and like that, we've sinned. And he wants to help us avoid that. And also, assuming you're reading the psalm, obviously if you're reading the psalm, that means you're paying attention to what God has to say in general. And if you're paying attention, you want that warning. You don't, you're not just this is just sort of a one-shot deal. You're reading it because you care about what God has to say, and God tells you what you want to know in order that you can do what he wants and not mess up. So now where the benefit lies in the trouble for mankind in general. Whatever it was that we thought we had to say, I think I did a typo there. We don't have a right to say it because of what our behavior's been. So we have both our weakness in our tendencies. If we're the men here, are we loving vain words and seeking after lies? Are we even being just angry and maybe on the verge of sin? You don't want to sin in anger, and then you're loving after things that are not right, because that'll separate you from God. But on the other hand, if you're in God's good graces, you don't have anything to worry about either. God is completely in control of it. So immediately before he says, to ponder it, so I think he's saying ponder all of these things. Know that the Lord has set apart the godly for himself. The Lord hears when I call to him. Be angry and do not sin. Ponder in your own hearts on your beds and be silent. So, rather than just jumping to conclusions, doing whatever you think you ought to do to solve a situation, sit for a minute, consider that the Lord has set apart the godly for himself, and that the Lord hears when a godly man calls him. What is that? What are the implications of that? If God has set apart those who are his, he set them apart from something else. There's a division there. So there's two groups, those who are God's people and those who are not God's people. If there's only two groups, you're in one of those groups because you're a person. And we need God to have that kind of control over us, over what we're doing, so that we'll end up in the right group. Because if God isn't telling us what to do, we will end up in the wrong group because we won't be pleasing to him. And again, that is a warning, a division that we need to be aware of. You don't want to not feel pain when you get hurt. You want to know that something's wrong. God's telling us there's a specific group you need to be a part of in order to be pleasing. And if you are either doing wrong in general, or if you're angry, stop, think about the situation in general. God can tell who are his people and who are not. And that is a very good thing for those who are controlling themselves. And it is a very scary thing for people who either go ahead and do wrong anyway or just aren't thinking about it. Their ignorance of the situation does not absolve them of their responsibility. So we need to silence our anger and the concern. Like I said, whatever you thought you were going to say, that he says, hold on, wait a minute. Were you going to condemn God for something? Obviously, you don't want to do that. You don't want to put yourself in a position where you've separated yourself from God. That's really what he's getting at. So consider the implications of basically God's knowledge of mankind. God can read hearts. God knows where we are at with him. And so we need to make sure we're doing right so that he will keep us in the right camp. As humanity, we have evil tendencies. If evil wasn't tempting to us, we wouldn't want to do it. That's sort of the crux of the whole matter. But we can face those temptations and not sin. Temptation in itself is not a sin. We can look at those things and consider, how do we want this to come out? And with the knowledge of God's word and its instruction, we can avoid acting in a way that we should not. So that was Psalm 4. Next, Psalm 64. Flip over there, and I will read the whole thing again. Hear my voice, O God, in my complaint. Preserve my life from the dread of the enemy. Hide me from the secret plots of the wicked, from the throng of evildoers, who whet their tongues like swords, who aim bitter words like arrows, who push at the blameless, shooting at him suddenly and without fear. They hold fast to their evil purpose. They talk of laying snares secretly, thinking, who can see them? They search out injustice, saying, we have accomplished a diligent search. Inward mind and heart of man, for the inward mind and heart of man are deep. But God shoots his arrow at them, they are wounded suddenly. Excuse me. Ruin with their own tongues turned against them. All who see them will wag their heads. Excuse me. Then all mankind fears, they tell what God has brought about and has done. Let the righteous one rejoice in the Lord and take refuge in him. Let all the upright in heart exult. A drink of water did me more harm than good. So this is written from David's personal perspective. He's hear my voice, O God, is how he starts. So he's speaking from his perspective about reality in general. But the actual pondering, the consideration, the meditation in the verse is done by everybody in general, and is caused by the works of God. The wicked choose to ignore God and the reality of coming judgment. Verses 1 through 6 are descriptions of the wicked man. 1 through 4, they're doing evil. Well, one's kind of an intro, but secret plots, throngs of evildoers, tongues like swords, words like arrows, shooting at him without fear. That's important. They hold fast to their evil purpose, laying snares secretly, thinking who can see them. They search out injustice, for the inward mind and heart of a man are deep. They're doing a diligent search for what is evil. So that's a big list of their evil, their bad sides that they're feeding. Then in verse 5, so that was 1 through 4. In 5, they talk about how they think they're escaping. They're getting away with what they're doing. They talk of laying snares secretly, thinking who can see them. Well, God can see them, but they're not thinking that way. They're just, to them it's rhetorical. Who can see them? Nobody can see them. Us bad guys, we're the only ones who know about it. And in 6, the effort that they go into this, it's not just evil in passing, it's certainly not accident on their part. It's not a hidden sin. They're doing it without knowing it. They themselves are saying, we've accomplished a diligent search into the worst way we can do this bad thing. That is the depth of their wickedness. And that's not the way someone behaves when they know and believe that judgment is coming. If you have it anywhere in your mind that there's judgment coming, you don't do this. You don't sit around and plot evil on your bed and ambush the blameless and then say, no one knows I did that. Those two things, people think they're getting away with it. Mess with my slides. They're not. They've got it in them to know that between right and wrong in general, and chances are, and what chosen to push it aside, it doesn't make it go away. It still comes. Verse 7, God shoots his arrow at them. They are wounded suddenly. Their turned against them. He doesn't miss. He at this point they've been doing wrong. They've been letting them get away with it to a point, and then he says, and they think they're getting away with it. It's just because it comes from God. It's not 9 people on a jury, even though we try the best we can. It is justice, and the people around take notice. When a church or Christians go out, pay attention to the way we act. We've had instances where people come in and say, now I've heard that you guys believe this. None of us have ever heard that. People really are paying attention. People just, in general, people pay attention. Bernie Madoff be a massive fraud. That is a bad guy. See, he was people that you sort of people know just as these people who are doing the evil. But the people out in the world, look at what happens to the evil. He was doing evil, and suddenly it came upon him. Pausing, consider. Why wouldn't it? It ought to. That goes to work. If they were, if I am evil, God will. If I do anything that's evil, they weren't getting away with it. There was somebody, and justice came. And it says, all brought about and ponder what he has done. The fear of God, we fear God because he's more powerful than us. If it's a thing, some beat him up, and he does. No reason to be. We fear him because of his power and knowledge of who care. The people who are doing, those who are reasonable are going to think about it. And then the fear of God and knowledge of what comes to it should be peace and comfort to those who are obedient to him. So mankind fears, they tell about what God has done, ponder what he has done, take refuge in him, let the upright in heart. Is there anything for the upright in heart to be concerned about when you're not being with? So we can either the hard way, these people learning well, and you will get it. The rest of the people learn the easy way. You look, you see, you adjust your behavior because of it. 3rd Psalm 7. I cry aloud to God, and he will hear me. In my trouble I seek the Lord. In my night my hand is stretched out without wearying. My soul refuses to be comforted. When I remember God, I moan. When I meditate, my spirit faints. There's a meditation. Some of it anyway. You hold my eyelids open. I am so troubled that I cannot speak. I consider the days of old. The years long ago I said, let me remember my song in the night, meditate in my heart. And my spirit made a diligent search. Will the Lord spurn forever? Favorable? As his steadfast love is forever, are his promises at an end for all time? Has God forgotten to be gracious? Has he in anger shut up his compassion? Then I said, I will appeal to the years of the right hand of the Most High. Yes, I will remember your wonders of old. I will ponder all your work, meditate on your might. Your way, O God, is holy. What God is great like our God? You are the God who works wonders. You have made known your might among the peoples. The children of Jacob and Joseph. When the waters saw you, they were afraid. Indeed, the clouds poured out water. The skies gave forth thunder. Your arrows flashed on every side. The crash of your thunder was in the whirlwind. Your lightnings lighted up the world. The earth trembled. Your path through the great waters. Yet your footprints were unseen. Moses and Aaron. So this is really a description of a mental process that is going through in troublesome times. I think there's a couple times where, in general, it's things were bad, so I said to myself, I will, whatever, man, this is bad. What can I do to solve the problem? And then eliminate a whole bunch of things you know won't work. And okay, well, I'm going to think about try to work through this in my. The trouble that the world can provide is greater than we can handle on our own. If we solve all of our own problems on Earth, there would be to look for God. None whatsoever. whatsoever. If all you had to do was, go to Omega and I was thinking jump in, it sounds like baptism. Something like that. Walk under a wall, let's say, and all your problems. Who needs God? All you need is a waterfall. Just make sure the pool above it is always full, and everything will turn out just fine. As it is, I've talked about this before, each of us are who are absolute specks. We have no control over our circumstances. Extremely over our circumstances. We can control our own bodies most of the time, and everything around us influence as best we can, and it's pretty weak. So, because of that, he's in a bad situation. He's reaching out to God. In 2 through 4, he's reaching out for help. He's fainting, unable to sleep. He says, "You hold my eyelids open. I'm so troubled." The trouble is bad enough that he's just, it's crushing down on him. He can't sleep because of it. A great trial that you've experienced, and then consider trying to do that either without the knowledge of God or with the knowledge that there was no God. I have obviously not gone through a trial where, I was like, I'm holding up the absolute heaviest thing I can hold up, and then it was like, man, I'm glad there's a God, and the thing evaporated miraculously. Bad. A loved one dies, something like that, and then car wreck and is injured terribly, and things are going wrong. You're just like, why? And there's no answer to why, and there's no justice or rest or peace or anything to come at the end. It's all just random. It's all just meaningless, and it's a really quick trip to life is meaningless if there is no God. Okay, so you evolved from a puddle of goo. Feel good about yourself? No, and nobody ever will. And not only is it a real down, it's also a lie. God created us, God put us here, God gave meaning and a purpose to creation. So he says, set feelings aside for now. This, how God works, let me consider this. Will his love forever cease, or his promises at an end for all time? Has God forgotten to be gracious? Has he in anger? These are the questions that you ask, because that's the way it feels. Man, life is bad right now. Has God forgotten about me? And I say it kind of sing-songy, whatever, but that's the way we think. And he knows the answer to these questions. If we ask ourselves these questions, that doesn't mean you shouldn't ask them to yourselves. And where does he? He goes back and looks at God's words. In 10, I will appeal to this, to the ears of the right hand of the Most High. I will remember the deeds of the Lord. Remember your wonders of old. So, let's consider, has God forgotten to take care of me? Let me look at everything that God's done. We'll see if we find any examples of either God. Maybe there's an instance where we find God, hey, let's go check. And good time to keep in mind that God doesn't change. So, when we over and over and over and over and over again that God, the answer to your specific problem is God is taking care of you. He describes God as great and holy. What God is great. Like, starts off after he says, I'm going to think about your deeds. He thinks about God specifically. God is great and holy. 15, with your arm redeemed your people, the children of Joseph, Jacob, and attributes of God. Here's what specific people. So that's for the trouble that I'm going through. It looks like Even when we look at accounts of punishment, someone like Eli's sons are wicked, and they go out, killed. We look at that, or Nadab and Abihu, and even though we know it's just, we might say, man, that seems kind of harsh. Well, to us seems kind of harsh. It proves to us that God means what he says, and if we know God means what God says, I love you and I care about you, he means that too. That helps seal the deal for us, and is also incentive, don't do bad things. So the works that God has done in the past, that he goes and looks at, those have purpose. God has done those people, and it will way for us. And he makes a real quick jump from my trouble to sort of God's big solutions. At the beginning, he's saying, I cry aloud to God, my trouble. Self-centered as we are when we're in a time of trouble. And then I'm going to think, and immediately, wow, God is great. Wow, God's done good things for us. Even really thinking about, I mean, it's still about God, but it stops being about people in general. In 16 through 20, well, 16 through 19, he's basically just raving about God's amazing control over the weather. If that doesn't solve your, man, my problems are big, your problems aren't big. Not something that someone who controls water and thunder and lightning and whirlwinds and causes the earth to tremble can't solve. So he doesn't spend a whole lot of time on specifically stating God saved his people. He says it in 15, and he says it again in 20, but he doesn't really dwell on it. So sure, God saved his people, but man, God controls the earth. And, that's some serious power we're talking about. And the earth obeys God. The whole Jesus speaking to the water in the storm and calming it was incredibly amazing to the apostles, who had seen other pretty amazing things, and they were like, who is this guy? He's been telling you who. So, if you stop and think about, ponder the amazing things that God has done in nature, and I always think of like the pictures of nebula or whatever that are just, oh wow, that's a pretty thing in space, a big cloud, and then it turns out it's like 13 light years across. Think about something like that, or your eyeball works, or things. Think about it for 10 minutes, and for a moment you'll run out of, what crazy wonder should I think about next? You don't need to think about another wonder. You've run out of ideas for the moment, and all you can think of is, that's some pretty amazing stuff. I don't need to worry about whatever it is that I'm dealing with right now, because the person who has that power has made promises, and his promises include prayer for you, love for you, provision for you, and because of that, your worries should go away. So, introduces a new perspective on whatever we're going through. So you have downer thoughts, you can switch them out with upper thoughts because of that new perspective that we can get because of meditating on God's deeds. The third psalm we'll look at is 143. I'm sorry about the coughing. Psalm 143. Hear my prayer, O Lord. Give ear to my pleas for mercy. In faithfulness answer me in your righteousness. Enter not into judgment with your servant, for no one living is righteous before you. For the enemy has pursued my soul. He has crushed my life to the ground. He has made me sit in darkness like those long dead. Therefore my spirit faints within me, and my heart within me is appalled. I remember the days of old. Again, there's the same wording from the last one. I meditate on all that you have done. I ponder the work of your hands. I stretch out my hands to you. My soul thirsts for you like a parched land. For my spirit fails. Hide not your face from me, lest I be like those who go down to the pit. Let me hear in the morning of your steadfast love, for in you I trust. Make me know the way I should go, for to you I lift up my soul. Deliver me from my enemies, O Lord. I have fled to you for refuge. Teach me to do your will, for you are my God. Let your good spirit lead me on level ground. For your name's sake, O Lord, preserve my life. In your righteousness, bring my soul out of steadfast love. You will cut off my enemies, and you will destroy all the adversaries of my soul, for I am your servant. So pretty similar to 77. We won't spend quite as much time on this one, probably. But rather than Asaph takes that quick trip from my problems are bad, I'll think about God. Wow, God's done amazing things. This is a much more, it stays on a personal level, and it's a more explicitly stated resolution to the specific problem. Asaph deals with the problem, and the problem disappears because I'm so focused on the wonder of God that the problem is inconsequential. David in 143, I've got a problem, God solves the problem. I think it's interesting how he talks specifically about guilt. He doesn't lay out specific guilt like he does in other places, or there's not a specific guilt that I'm aware of like there is for I think it's 51, where it says in the little header thing, which is also inspired, that it's about the sin with Bathsheba. Verse 2, enter not into judgment with your servant, for no one living is righteous before you. Okay, well, that's kind of a little bit of a sad thought. No one's good enough. There's nothing we can do. And then he just kind of moves on from that, from his guilt, to talking about the bad situation. It's not very long to spend on, I'm not righteous before you, God, when you know you're not righteous before God, and you immediately then go asking him. That's kind of a weird jump to make, so it would seem. But at the same time, he's sort of gotten that idea out of the way. Not that, okay, yeah, God, I sinned, whatever, but, but it's acknowledging that God knows hearts. And if God, because there's people who have never presumably sinned publicly, and no one else knows something has gone on. I point to slap somebody in public. Maybe Lee has. Lee's laughing. Something like that. Maybe nobody ever has. God knows whatever it is that Sewell Hall has done. At some point, he's given into some sin, and undoubtedly he's very sorry for that. But God knows that no man is righteous before him. He knows, because those are the same parts he's reading, God knows which are the ones who are trying to serve him. And David says, look, I know you read hearts, and when you look at mine, you see someone who is doing their best. And so it's not really a quick or weird jump to make to helping God or asking God for help, because you know where I'm at, God, and I'm doing my best to serve you. And he ends with that in 12. I think Asaph kind of did this also, but he mentions in 5, I remember the days of old. Okay, well, that's a long span of time. I meditate on all that you have done. I ponder the work of your hands. It was a pretty general, it's not. I thought about the time when the Israelites crossed the Red Sea. I ponder all that you have done. So that's going to take some time if you actually do that. If you actually do that, it's time well spent. And man, are there going to be no space in your room in your brain for problems anymore because of all the time you spend. If at the time, for whatever reason, thinking about God helping them cross the Red Sea doesn't help, but raising Lazarus from the dead helps, for goodness sake, think about raising Lazarus from the dead, because God put that there for the same reason that he put them across the Dead Sea, to prove I am God and I can do whatever it is that I need to do people to prove who my servants are, and so on. Overwhelming situation. This is what David thinks it is, and that's what Asaph thought it was. But in 4, my spirit faints within me, my heart within me is appalled. He's in the absolute pit. then a few words later, really, in verse 10, teach me to do your will. He's not concerned about being in the pits anymore. It's, I know I've got a job to do. God, tell me how to do my job right. I want to do this right. Teach me what your will is so that I can do it. So again, I have that change of perspective of my problems go to being very small when I've got a job to do and God is going to help me work through doing my job before Him properly. God protects the obedient for His name's sake, so obey and believe. I already pointed out that God sees the heart. I think that's why, in this case at least, David makes such a quick jump from, yeah, I'm guilty, to God, please help me. So if He sees our heart, and of course He sees everything that we do, even if it's in a physical thing in secret, nobody else sees. He knows everything about us. We know that we're not going to achieve His grace based on merit. That doesn't make sense because of what grace is. He's not gonna bless us because of our own merit. It's gonna be because of Him. So the best reason you could possibly think of for God to do something is because God said so, because God follows up on His promises and God doesn't change. So, God, O Lord, preserve my life in your righteousness, bring my soul out of trouble. You can see my heart, you know I'm trying. I'm one of those people you promise you will take care of. So, please go ahead and do that, because you said you would. And then at the end, for I am your servant. That is why, not because my servantness is great, but because of who I am a servant of, and it's you. So, what is the work of God? He looks at what God's done in the past. It says, God has been working for His people in the past. There's no reason why that's all of a sudden stopping now. God doesn't change. He did it for His name's sake, and that certainly hasn't changed, and He will continue to do that forever now. So the final psalm is 101. I'll again read all of it. I will sing of steadfast love and justice. To you, O Lord, I will make music. I will ponder the way that is blameless. When will you come to me? I will walk with integrity of heart within my house. I will not set before my eyes anything that is worthless. I hate the work of those who fall away. It shall not cling to me. A perverse heart shall be far from me. I will know nothing of evil. Whoever slanders his neighbor secretly, I will destroy. Whoever has a haughty look and an arrogant heart, I will not endure. I will look with favor on the faithful in the land, that they may dwell with me. He who walks in the way that is blameless shall minister to me. No one who practices deceit shall dwell in my house. No one who utters lies shall continue before my eyes. Morning by morning I will destroy all the wicked in the land, cutting off all the evildoers from the city of the Lord. Now this one has quite a different feel than all the rest. The world isn't falling apart in this one, as it is in the other ones. They certainly start off with a down feel of, man, I'm in a time of trouble, so I'll reach out to God. Which, of course, people who at any other time would say, I don't even believe in God. 2 towers hit, everybody's religious. That doesn't happen here. It's just straight in, I will sing of steadfast love and justice. Never a bad time for that, right? We don't need difficult circumstances to remind us of God. One way to avoid the world falling apart is, could David have avoided the difficulty and anguish he went through when he was writing Psalm 51? He certainly could have. If he hadn't sinned in the first place, if he turned his eyes away and then not called after, not kept looking, and then not called Bathsheba, and then not murdered her husband, and then all this other stuff. We'd had examples of that elsewhere, but that one could have been avoided. I don't know if the situations in those other psalms were caused by those people specifically or not, but to the extent that we can help ourselves out by not putting ourselves in a bad situation, do it. We have the phrase, idle hands are the devil's playground, or some variation of that. That is only reasonable because there's only so much time. If we had unlimited time, it wouldn't really so much matter, because sure, you can do all that you can do what's right, and then there's still more time to do what's wrong. But you have so much time between you wake up in the morning, when you go to bed at night, and that has to be filled with something. And there's some things like God doesn't care if you brush your teeth 2 or 3 times, but there's generally good things and bad things. And if you're doing good things, you won't have time for bad things. If you're doing bad things, you're not going to have time for good things. So we can by doing good save ourselves a lot of trouble and difficulty. Specifically, thinking on even if you're what are you thinking about, pondering on whatever it is that I lost it. Bring on the way that is blameless while you're driving to work. You don't have other things. It talked about basically the wicked man of his mind to try to figure out. We've made a diligent search to figure out the wickedest thing we can do. If you are pondering the way that is blameless. So that fill your mind with good thoughts, face with good people. He also mentions, I will look with favor. May dwell with me in verse 6. He who is blameless, what he's thinking shall minister to me. It's supposed to work. If 5 other people, and each of those other 4, if we have a group of 6 people, everyone's got to work. So I'm supposed to be encouraging. You're supposed to be encouraging all of us. Lee's supposed to be. We need to ponder the way that is blameless, and one of the 2. And yet we have trouble with something. He ends with, well, it doesn't end with it. It ends with it. I will walk with integrity of heart within my house. He says when he's the way that is blameless. Our study through the Psalms on 101 was one that I had. Righteousness. It's very, you want to do what's right? And there's in actual application, because David's writing this, he's the king of Israel, and where's the word destroy? Destroy all the wicked in the land. It's not my job to go and destroy the land, like it was David's job, but it is my job to destroy and to use. When he's talking I will not set it before my eyes anything that is worthless. Hate the work of those who integrity, because I only lack integrity sometimes. It's good, meaningless. Integrity has. I wouldn't lie to you. You've been around, but I wouldn't lie to you. And I fully expect you to lie. I know what's going to happen, because it's just easier to tell a lie than to. If it's just as easy to do this to lie, sure, I'll go ahead and tell the truth. If not, a lie's coming out. You will have integrity. short, as we all fall short, but with an intention of that you remind yourself every the way that is blameless, to know nothing evil, than doing what's wrong. So, focus our thoughts on what is good. That is going to help focus our actions. He's not just filling his thoughts, he's having thoughts, he's making plans so that he can do what is good. Specifically, it might have been going out of the call, spend time with me is one of the things that he does. Favor, I will reward that person. But at the same time, we don't need help with things that we want to do, generally. Right? To go to Six Flags, someone help me through the gate, right? No. We want to do what's right, but things are difficult because of the so back up there, you kind of remember where they were, basically just pointing down. Almost had those specific sort of roots through, and I'm sure if we could also use the word, had translated in the ESV, meditate, we would have any time. His holy ones and all the you're pondering God's deeds. You're angry on a cross after having lived a perfect, people hating on him absolutely nonstop. While he had nails in his hands on a cross, and you're angry, what give them and that solves your problem? First, that's going to again lead you to silence. He did say, if you've got the strength, like say, after you've silenced what you should not have said, now you're thinking about it. He sent his son, did all this stuff. Well, of trouble under God's justice. In Revelation, we read, he says to those under the altar who are saying, "He's going to come." You're worried about justice now. Deaths and died, being in Colosseums. We're still waiting for the end times and ultimate justice to come, and you're worried about put the plug in your tire, right? So he says to those people, yet anyway, we can rely on because of that. If you're done, you've committed. Word, and you do what you know to be wrong. What do you know? Judgment is coming. If I don't do something about it, then there's going to be unlimited suffering. How to think about God has set the whole apart. God knows who his people are. Or we're never in a group, or the point is he knows. There's a division and he knows which group you're in. And if and you know which group you're in, and it's the whatever I thought and change your then you need going this way. That's the lesson for this. On that, if there's sin in your life that you know about, that's something. He's told us how to live, given us examples. So, not just speaking. There's an entire birth of so and so did such and such. It is. He's shown us his own in 77, both as an example. Jesus came and lived exactly the way on earth. He also shows his character as proof. When he does good for those who punishes those who disobey him, just in the fact if anybody finds a situation where they've been disobedient and need to get out of that, only pondering there that's going to physical action. How you want God to be lovey-dovey. That's not going to. There's a real separation from God, and it needs to be solved. Think about that if you're in that situation. A division between people. Just God has integrity, and you need to also. And then, not just ponder it, but ponder it with a purpose. The purpose being that righteous sorrow and ask needs to